the fact that we are in a very turbulent point in our history. The threat of a global thermonuclear war between the United States and Russia has brought us closer to doomsday than ever before. As the existence of humanity now hangs in the balance, what's needed now more than ever is people standing up and declaring independence from the forces that choose to sink us to our demise.
To stand up against the pessimism that reeks in our culture, that plagues the minds of people, that has destroyed our society and our humanity. What's needed now more than ever is to regain the ability to think for ourselves once again. Instead of being divided between two opposing camps, both of which are equally wrong and totally inconsistent with what is really truthful, we seek to go outside those limits and engage in a process of dialogue with various minded people in politics, art, culture, and other subjects.
We do not believe in talking to people who share the same points of view as us, but with people that are sincere and have something productive to say on the current state of affairs in the world. And this can be anybody.
Today, we declare independence from the torchbearers and break our chains to seek out and find and talk with those who are also unafraid.
We declare independence from the tyranny of those who think they can control our thoughts and can force us to choose between what they present to us like shadows in a cave. That's why we are declaring independence.
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for coming on to our kind of like revival stream. We have a pretty packed show. I don't know where my co-host Kynan is. He's just in the void, I guess. He maybe got swept up in the smoke that's happening today, which I wish he was here because we had a whole choreographed thing, a poetic thing about the melodrama where we find ourselves with our guests today. And who are our guests today? Well, I'm going to bring them up right now so they're not surprised. We are joined by Keaton and Russell of Do Dissidents, very good friends of mine. Hi guys, how's it going?
Doing great. Always great to see you.
How are you, Jose?
I'm oh no, I had the melodrama planned. Okay. We meet here today in the backset of an apocalyptic haze where the smoke looms over as the war in Ukraine escalates further and further. You know, I'm sure somebody's going to write a book about how this smoke is like a metaphor for our society at some point. So if anybody wants to do that and take credit and give me 5% of their royalties, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Biden team should photograph it. This should be their campaign logo with the Biden 2024.
Goddamn capitalists! You just lost all the tankies. You just lost the tanky audience.
Yeah.
And don't let anyone tell you any different. Those people are very enthusiastic super chatters.
Yeah, actually, and speaking of
they're getting capital somewhere.
So speaking of super chatters, our channel was just approved for monetization also. So,
I saw that.
So we are so we are eligible for super chats, super stickers, super money, super Zells, super donations, whatever people want to super with, we will take it all. So please, if you feel free to support us and support our Patreon too. Today we just posted our complete unabridged interview with Oliver Stone, which we'll be getting to an abridged interview with Oliver Stone a little later. But for now, we're going to begin our first segment, and I'm just going to check in on Kynan here, who's gone again.
If you can text them, sometimes exiting the studio and then coming back in, just like exiting out entirely and coming back in.
I think that's what he tried to do. He's just texted me saying he just had problems getting on. I hope he figures it out. And it'd be really awkward if my technical thing goes down.
Yeah, then we just got to do our show.
Then we'll just be like, welcome to Do Dissidents Unplugged.
Yeah, right. So
this is our acoustic set.
I want to begin our first segment here with the breaking news. Actually, I think everybody's really talking about war in Ukraine, escalations and stuff, and we're going to get to that. But I think something even more pressing than that is the fact that the CEO of CNN has just left after 1 year. And my understanding is that this CEO who came in was the one who had the balls to actually pull the plug, on CNN Plus. I don't know if you guys remember that failed project.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes. Anderson Cooper sharing the difficulties, trials, and tribulations of a single father who happens to be at Vanderbilt.
So I want to just play this clip here just so we can hear it from the mouth of them. I hope they don't play an ad. That sucked. I knew they were going to do that. Let's just mute the audio on that. No, don't look at that. No free advertisement here. Maybe I should have had this loaded. It's also my first time doing this on StreamYard. So
yeah, it's all right. You get the hang of it.
Okay.
They should create a Patreon now, CNN. Could you imagine Jake Tapper? Support us on patreon.com/CNN.
That's what it's going to come down to
Yeah,
before too
exactly.
long.
Oh, wait. Could people hear that or no? Or no. I think I didn't share my tab audio. Let's try this again. Come here. Share screen. Share tab audio. CNN. Share. Okay, let's try this. Here we go.
We have news now
Beautiful.
to report involving our own network. News to us here at CNN and you at home. CNN's chairman and CEO, Chris Licht, is leaving the network. Licht took over the network a little over a year ago. David Zaslav, the chairman of CNN's parent company, Warner Brothers Discovery, he just made the announcement at the network editorial meeting. For now, a leadership team will take Licht's place, led by Amy Antelis, who's the executive vice president of talent and content development, along with Virginia Mosley, the EVP of editorial, Eric Sherling, our programming EVP, and David Levy, our new chief.
So there you go. It's the death of CNN. I mean, although I don't think this really was the death. I think the death happened a long time ago. But, there's Kynan. Oh, never mind. Kynan left again. But yeah, I don't know.
He owes me money.
What was that?
He owes me money. He's ducking me.
Kynan? Yeah, I keep seeing
I lent him some quarters for the meter.
I keep seeing him pop into the back stage and then it just pops him out again. I don't know what's going on with his connection, but yeah, you know. So what does this mean? Does this mean we have to now make a GoFundMe for CNN?
Go ahead, Russell.
Well, the chain of events was very interesting. They brought him in to do this because the ratings are terrible. They're a laughing stock. We probably have more people watching right now than are watching CNN. It's a fucking disaster. So they brought him in to clean house. They brought him in to whack everybody. They brought him in to be the heavy. What's always dangerous about being brought in to be the heavy is you're going to make enemies. And unless the people who sent you in to do that really have your back, they're going to toss you overboard as soon as they start to get pushback. Or very often, they'll use you to clean house in the way they wanted you to clean house. And then they'll go, oh, we got to get rid of the bad man. It wasn't us. It was the bad man that we hired to do exactly what he did. They wanted somebody. Clearly, what Zucker was doing, I mean, CNN Plus alone shows. So, I mean, you know, this is what's really, I think, amazing to people like us who don't have two nickels to rub together. You look at a guy like Jeff Zucker who got paid hundreds of millions of dollars to make decisions like CNN Plus, when I think any one of us would have known that was a bad fucking idea. Just like, God damn it. Where do I sign? How do I get in on that scam where these fucking half-bright doofuses get to play with millions of dollars and exit these networks with golden parachutes for destroying their ratings? So Licht not only was not able to improve the ratings, but once he put Trump on the air, the libs, I'm sure, put a lot of pressure on the owners, who it's all one big club and you ain't in it. They have to see these people at parties and at baptisms and at weddings and at funerals. And I'm sure everywhere they went there, what the hell are you doing? You put Trump on TV. What's going on with this Chris Licht person? And all of that came together in a 15,000 word article from The Atlantic, basically excoriating Chris Licht. And that was what did it. I mean, they got so much pushback from the neoliberal upper class that finally they got rid of this guy for doing exactly what they hired him to do, which was an easy thing to do because actually in the end, from what I understand, CNN's ratings didn't go up. It went down because they're in an impossible bind. The only people who watch that are the kind of people who actually think Don Lemon was doing a good job. So once you got rid of him, once you put Trump on the air, when you got rid of what Brian Stelter, when you got rid of these people, your only audience are these 78-year-old people on dialysis who watch fucking CNN all day, and now you got rid of all their friends. You got rid of all their companions, right? So now they stopped watching you, and there's no obvious reason for anyone else to watch you. It's not like all of a sudden it became this great network with really interesting voices and really interesting ideas. To reshape themselves into something that would pull in, say, people like us, that is so far outside of the mental universe they inhabit. They don't even understand what a network like that would look like. So they wound up getting rid of all these people, but it just tanked their ratings because they didn't create anything new to bring in new people who weren't watching before. So that made it very easy for them to get rid of them.
Well, that was always the design flaw in the rebrand, which is that the people who watched CNN were basically liberals who wanted all of their sort of biases confirmed in not as naked a way as they see them confirmed on MSNBC, right? They're liberals who want that plausible deniability, right? If
what do you mean? This is the real news.
Well, yeah, right. When Joy Reid says January 6th was worse than 9/11, they believe it, but they're like, oh, we heard it from Joy Reid. How credible a source is that? Can we really bring that up at the next cocktail party? When Jake Tapper says that January 6th is worse than 9/11, well, I heard it on the news, right? So once they actually tried to shift away from that and actually play it a little bit more down the middle, there was never an audience there because there's no longer an audience for just straight down the middle news. The people who still want that are trying to find it in newspapers, and even then it's really almost impossible to find because no one wants it. People want perspective, right? Now there's a difference between propaganda and perspective, which, by the way, a lot of the CNN audience, just like the MSNBC audience, just like the Fox audience for that matter, doesn't really know the difference. But there's a difference between getting a news with a certain perspective and just rank propaganda. And there is still, I think, a big market for like perspective in news content, for sort of, yes, opinions and point of views that inform the coverage, that can still be, at least objective coverage in the presentation of information. But there's no market for just, okay, tell me what happened. Why would there be? It's not exciting. Everybody knows a show is a show. What makes a show? What makes a show on stage is the same thing that makes a show on TV, whether it's narrative or documentary or news. It's conflict. If you don't have conflict, there's no reason for the audience to be watching. Period. That applies to all mediums. That applies to everything. And so there was no market for the product they were trying to create. And so it was doomed from the very start of their sort of transition.
Maybe Kynan and I should do a fight or something over the ownership of this channel to create more conflict and drama for people to come in. Before I comment, I just want to say, first of all, Eric Housseau, thank you for the $5. You are our first super chat. Yeah.
Ever.
You, Eric Housseau, you have our undying loyalty and grace and love and respect. Yes, and he asked, I see, this is why I messed up. I wish I could have highlighted it.
Hang on, where is that coming in from? Because I'm not seeing it on
You have to go to the YouTube page.
I'll
teach you,
right.
Jose, if you want, like I said, I'll give you a crash course in this. There's a way to link your YouTube to the StreamYard, so it appears right in StreamYard, so you could just highlight it. But I can show you how to do that.
Because I did the RTMP custom. I didn't.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a way to streamline it a little bit.
And anyone else who super chats, I will watch. I promise you, I will see. He asked, "Did we see the?" Well, maybe we'll talk about this after the segment. But he asked, "Did you see Maupin's hilarious takedown of Crystal and Kyle's car ride smear of Dr. West? Smugness on maximum." The answer is yes, I did, and I'll be having him on to talk about that in a few days. But I just wanted to kind of respond to Keaton and you, Russ. You brought up a good point, Keaton, which is that people want perspective in news. Do you think it's enough to just kind of present the truth now? Because this is something that goes back, I mean, like thousands of years, right? Well, if you just tell people the truth to people who aren't educated in the field, is that enough? Like, if you started talking about the invention of penicillin and why it's so groundbreaking, is your ordinary plumber going to know exactly why that's important? Or even just like with the war in Ukraine, I mean, oh, there goes Kynan again. You see, this is the conflict. Maybe there we go, personally throttling him so he doesn't have a voice in the show. People can come up with their own conspiracies, but it's not enough anymore to just kind of report the truth. You kind of have to explain things to people, because I think you have a dumbed down population or an illiterate population now, where people kind of have to have things explained to them, like what certain things mean. And I think the mainstream press today kind of take advantage of the fact that people aren't as educated anymore, or as, I don't know, versed in politics today, so they can literally just make anything up.
Well, so much of what disguises itself as objective news is not that. I mean, I don't know if you read that absolutely laughable New York Times piece, which we might cover on our show tomorrow, in fact. It's a packed week of news, so I don't know if we'll get to it. But the New York Times ran this article saying, like, it's time for Ukrainian soldiers to stop displaying Nazi logos because that's making it more difficult to combat Russian propaganda that there are Nazis in the Ukrainian armed forces. Talk about a perversion of the story. The story is there's a whole lot of Nazis fighting for Ukraine. Right. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so that's written as an objective story. They are presenting that as an objective news story.
Right.
It presents the thorny issues of history, right? They're trying to couch this in very objective language.
Don't you know, if you guys keep showing your Nazi memorabilia, people are gonna think you're Nazis?
Right, exactly. You're making yourself look bad doing this. Why do you have to do that? Right, and so that is.
Look, I know the goose stepping is from a knee injury, but they don't know that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Whereas, like what we just told you, what Russ just told you about CNN and Chris Licht and that timeline that he laid out, that was truth. That was telling you what happened. That was giving you the story. He wasn't pretending not to have an attitude about the story. That's what makes it interesting, hopefully, is the fact that we have an attitude about it. We have a point of view about it, and people are free to agree or not agree with our point of view. So I think you should tell the story. I don't think you should come on here and just do straight spin. Yeah, no, CNN fired Chris Licht because, he sucks and CNN sucks, and, come watch our show. You got to actually give the story. But there's no reason to hide the fact that you have a certain point of view, as long as that point of view doesn't distort the truth of what you're actually talking about.
You mean like here, the photographs and their deletion, this is from the article, and their deletions highlights the Ukrainians' military complicated relationship with Nazi imagery. A relationship.
It's complicated.
Just that sentence. Complicated. A complicated relationship with Nazi imagery. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
It's like Nazi Tinder. It's complicated.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, which is a guy, obviously, to anyone who's read more than 100 news articles in their life, who gets a sense of how these things work, it's obvious that they're putting their spin on a story while trying to present it as objectively as possible. Well, they have a complicated relationship with Nazi imagery.
Yeah, and well, here, if you could, that relationship has become especially delicate because President Putin of Russia has falsely declared Ukraine to be a Nazi state, a claim he has used to justify his illegal invasion. So, that right there, I think, goes to show you the spin, because they're already saying, well, what Putin's saying is false. But also they do have Nazi imagery, but it's not what Putin is saying. And I think they had to remove something in this article.
Tibetan mystics.
Yeah, and I think they removed something in the article where they said explicitly they were telling people can you hide your Nazis logos,
yeah, can you
please?
Hide it? Can you ixnay it? Yeah. No, I mean, it's just amazing. Greenwald did a segment on this the other night, and he made just a great point, because one of the things that the Times used to sort of try and debunk the Nazi narrative is that, well, Zelensky himself is Jewish, so therefore it's ridiculous to say that Ukraine has a Nazi problem. And what Greenwald said is, find me a liberal who, during the Obama years, would tell you that racism is not a problem here in the U.S. because Obama's president. They would never buy that. They would never buy that, as they shouldn't buy that, right? But they expect us to buy that now. Oh, well, Zelensky's Jewish, therefore, what do you mean Nazis in Ukraine? If there were so many Nazis, how did, they put this guy in power when obviously a lot of the Azov fighters are anti-Zelensky, right? They want to fight back. They want to fight off the Russians, and then they probably want to overthrow what's left of the Ukrainian government as well. So it's just a ridiculous article through and through. But it is written, like I said, under the guise of an objective news piece.
Yeah, Kynan was just telling me about a piece that Aaron Mate had referenced about Stephen Cohen, that Zelensky actually ran under peace. You remember this, Kynan?
Yeah, well, the Gray Zone had documented this because Zelensky, he originally ran as a peace candidate. He said that, he wanted to follow through on the Minsk Accords, and he had actually went to that area, that contested area, the Donbass, to actually negotiate with, the people that were fighting the separatists. And what Aaron Mate reported was that one of them said, you're not supposed to come here and tell us what to do. We're the ones who do the fighting. And if you come back here and tell us this, we're going to hang you by a tree. So it just shows you how much Zelensky is control,
But see, how then do you report that? Or do you, I think that doesn't need any spin alone, right? Or is that a spin?
I don't agree that people don't want the truth, and this just shows how much of a topsy-turvy world we're living in. Tucker dropped his first little mini clip of Tucker on Twitter, and that was a whole lot of truth, and people were interested.
No, but it was the truth. It was his perspective. Yes, he was dropping a lot of truth, but he had a point of view. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying people don't want the truth.
I mean, that's talent. I mean, that's charisma. Yeah. Like he with his whole Tucker thing, for whatever reason, it works. It's compelling. It holds together. And also, something I think you have to look at is the fact that I think if you had told people before it happened, oh, no, there's a market for 3-hour podcasts where some, comedian talks to just scientists and politicians. That'll be the number one show in the country. They would have told you were crazy. People will never sit and listen to 3 hours of current affairs. They're never going to do it. Now, it's a very popular medium. It's very popular. I personally, I would never believe it. I don't think anybody would believe that there was that kind of hunger to listen to intense, serious political current events discussions, but there is. So at that point, I think you have to say it's not so much that the people want garbage. It's that the people who produce the content want to give them garbage. There's a dumbing down of the culture. I think that's true in entertainment. I think it's true in our news media. I don't think the fault is in the people. I think the fault is in the people who create it.
Sure, I never said the people wanted garbage or that they can't take news. I think what is more compelling than straight news is opinion commentary, and the most successful of which comes from people who tell the truth and give the truth along with their point of view on that. Whereas what CNN tried to do is they tried to pivot from Democrat propaganda to subtle Democrat propaganda disguised as objective news, which is why they went out of their way to satisfy the other side. And that doesn't work because the audience who came there to see Jake Tapper and Anderson Cooper, concern troll about Trump, right? And once they stopped doing that, people stopped coming in because the people were going for that perspective all along. They wanted that confirmation bias all along. So once they tried to hide it, what's that? Snoozers, boring. We don't want it. Or if they try to compensate, then you piss them off.
They got
Now you have
offended
Trump
by
on,
it.
right? Now you have Jake Tapper going on the air and just reading through. Okay, so this is a key moment. Jake Tapper goes on the air. He reads through the Biden poll numbers and he says, "This is terrible." Right now, he wasn't giving his opinion there. That's just any person of any political literacy at all will tell you that latest round of polls, I forget when this was, a couple weeks ago, was awful news for Joe Biden. Of course, the libs don't want to watch that. Why would they?
But then what about like the Twitter guys who are paid off, who swear to God they're not paid off by Biden, but they are.
The Sisson and the Harry and Chris. I call
Harry,
forget
Harry
their last
Sissy,
names.
Yeah. Those guys, right? Like, I mean, that's clearly not the truth, and that's clearly very biased, and they're very paid off. You know, on that point you were making about the dumbing down of culture, I don't know if you guys browse TikTok. I have a very bad addiction to it, but what they do is they have these like Reddit stories, right? So it's like it's your vertical phone, and then the top half of it is like whatever video, whether it's informative, political, maybe it is political. I've seen them do this with Parenti. So they have like Parenti going on about the evils of capitalism, and then underneath they have a video of someone playing like Subway Surfers or like Fruit Ninja, something that's like visually stimulating, right? So that so when you were going on, Russ, about how the dumbing down of culture is a thing, I was almost going to make a joke saying, hold on, let me pull out the switch so people can watch something while they're hearing you. So that they can, let me play the key, Tears of the Kingdom while you're going on, so that they can understand what you're saying.
No, you know what I think it is. My grandfather. When you're a little kid, like any kind of like cardboard with sugar in it tastes good to you. So the Hostess and all that garbage and plastic and shrink wrap, like you'll eat that. You think it's the best thing in the world. My grandfather, he would go, garbage, that's garbage. I'd be like, what do you mean it's good? That's not what it's supposed to taste like. And you know what? When everything went back to artisanal, so now you'll go into Donut Plant and it's all homemade and it's all organic. I swear to God, the first thing I thought the first time I had one of their donuts was, this is what my grandfather was talking about, because he came up with it tasting like this. So you handed that guy a Hostess. It was like, what the fuck is that? But I didn't know any better because that's what they gave me, right? That's what we are. That's what we are. It's not that people won't eat better. It's that I think it's cheaper and it's easier to make garbage. So they've gone out of their way to convince people that garbage is normal and that garbage is all there is.
Yes, and I think, Kynan and I are definitely. Look, you're preaching to the choir here, okay? I mean, Kynan and I went through like a boot camp of Shakespeare and Beethoven and stuff, right? Like,
I know.
Like we coming to a theater near you.
Yeah.
We understand. Well, actually, Russ, it's crazy because last time we spoke, we were talking about this medium is the message thing. There is something that somebody sent me recently called medium is the massage or the massage, which is done by the same guy who coined the term.
I used to have that book. Yeah,
McLuhan,
Marshall McLuhan.
Yeah, McLuhan. Yeah. Right. And I was watching the thing and I was like, wait, this is explaining exactly how the internet is working now, right?
Oh, sure.
Yep.
It's and people don't even know the kind of effect it's having on them. And so how does that affect the way people even interpret what truth is anymore?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, if you look at if you look at a lot of the successful presidential campaigns that have been run, it has been when people match up their talents with what's on the vanguard of the next media wave, right? Medium is a message. FDR, radio. JFK, TV. Obama, internet. Trump, Twitter, social media, right? these figures who can harness the power of these emerging mediums and use their message, to or use those mediums as a vessel for their message, they tend to be very successful.
Yeah, that means the next natural step is VR. We gotta and I gotta invest in those Apple Vision glasses, the $3,500 ones. You guys see this?
No.
No, you didn't?
$3,500.
They're Apple's first pass at a interactive VR helmet. It'll have a VR mode, but it's also going to have, this has been talked about for a long time. Google already has it with Google Glass, but this is presumably for $3,500 a better version. You're going to be able to see around you and run your screen with your eye movements.
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to see your hands as well. And yeah, this has been discussed for a long time. And I don't know if they've taken it this far, but they're talking about if you're walking around the street, you'll be able to look and see what the price of the house or the apartment next to you is. You'll be able to look up a history while still being able to see. You'll be able to call up things like that.
And it looks fucking stupid, by the way, if you look at somebody wearing them. I mean, I like the concept, and the idea is that the stuff you'll see is in your room and stuff. So you'll be able to see the icons and stuff. So,
Exactly.
Maybe 12 years from now, when I run for president, which I won't, but if I do, I got to figure out how to harness that. And then, maybe work with Elon Musk and his neurochip. I want to highlight the chat here. Well, I can't really highlight it, but first, Eric Husso, again, thank you for another $5. He asked this question: does Tucker sound like an anti-imperial leftist now to you? And secondly, Dr. Nick Riviera asks, how do I feel knowing that I'm inspiring Max Blumenthal to confront power? Let me just answer that real quick before we go to Tucker. Max Blumenthal inspires me. Okay, Max has been doing this long before Kynan and I have been doing this and breathing. Max, actually, I think we when was this, Kynan? We highlighted something where he was confronting some Ukrainian guy who was clearly a Nazi. Max has a history of doing this long before we do. So I would just say you should ask Max how he feels about inspiring me to do this. So there's that. But does Tucker sound like an anti-imperial leftist now to you? I would say I think to be anti-imperial doesn't mean left or right. It just means anti-imperial.
No, I would agree at this point. Yeah.
Okay, I think this is a great place to kind of naturally segue into our next segment here, which I will pull up right now. Which, speaking on truth and all this, the Russia water. Damn, sorry, I should have been better prepared for this. But everybody and their mother has been blaming the Russians for what? Blowing up a Ukrainian dam or something like that. Fuck the BBC. Ukraine dam. What do you know about the Nova Kakhovka incident? And so Ukraine's military and NATO have accused Russia of blowing up the dam, while Russia has blamed Ukraine. Thousands of people have been evacuated from low-lying areas either side of the river Dnipro. UN humanitarian aid chief Martin Griffiths has warned of grave and far-reaching consequences. And then they go through what they know so far. Some of this water was used to actually cool some nuclear reactors in Zaporozhye. Kynan, do you know more about the situation? I think you were trying to brief me on this too.
Well, on the nuclear plant, I know they have another lake that's nearby that's actually providing water to cool the plant, so it's not an immediate danger. But on the right side of the...
Oh no, did we lose Kynan again? There you go, there's that conflict. Oh, okay, he's gone. Well,
fucking
there you go.
NSA.
It's the NSA. I was just about to say. Well, anyway, the big point with this,
he was about to reveal his source.
Oh, he's back.
You're gonna have to just disconnect and reconnect so you can hear us, Kynan. I know. I've been through this many times. This is the problem with doing StreamYards on your phone, is that if you get a phone call or a notification or something.
Oh, is he on his phone?
Yeah.
That's it. If you get a phone call, it'll throw you out.
Yeah, for like a good 5 minutes too. It's happened.
There's no way to disable that.
Well, only if you put your phone on like ultra do not disturb and turn off if someone calls you twice.
Oh, really? Can you do that? I don't even know how to do that.
That's the only way to do it on iPhone. But anyway, the point is people like John Kirby and Ursula von der Leyen, who put out this extreme tweet saying Russia will have to pay for the war crimes committed in Ukraine. The destruction of the dam and outrageous attack on civilian infrastructure puts at risk thousands of people in the Kherson region. Europe is mobilizing support through our civil protection mechanism. And so they're going to send them water pumps, fire hoses, mobile water purifications, boats. We stand by Ukraine as long as it takes. So obviously, what do they say? Don't let a good tragedy go to waste. Is that what they say? Right. And why, kind of continuing on with our conversation of truth, I mean, nobody, and this also, and it was in our Oliver Stone interview, Oliver Stone made this point. He said that nobody can really understand what's going on in Ukraine unless they watch his films on Ukraine to even get a basic understanding of it. I don't know necessarily if I would say you have to sit through 3 hours worth of content, but why is it that if you're just some guy who works 9 to 5, and you don't care to listen to Do Dissident, you don't care to listen to Gray Zone, right? Because it's easier to just turn on the TV or CNN. Or maybe even look on Twitter and look at who your favorite Vosh streamer is, or Hassan Piker, who have like millions and thousands of followers and views. Why is it easier to manipulate someone like that? Like, at what point is it responsible? Does the person have to take some responsibility to be woken up? I mean, what will induce them to break themselves out of the matrix to believe stuff that Russia would blow up their own dams like this?
I mean, that's the $1 million question, my friend. I don't understand. We were talking earlier about the Nazi article and things like that. These are the people who have run around since 2015 saying if you wear a MAGA hat, you're a Nazi. If you watch Tucker Carlson, you're a Nazi. The only people who aren't the Nazis are apparently the actual Nazis.
The Nazis are they're not the Nazis.
Who they insist are on the side of the angels here. So, no, these people are just, I mean, look, I say it all the time. I'm sure you've heard me say this a million times. These people are just the dumbest people, not in America, in American history. And this Ukraine thing is really a situation where you've got to be a fucking moron if you are still buying the party line on this right now. I mean, it's as simple as that, man. I wish I can give you a better answer, but it's been self-evident for a very long time. These people are just very, very stupid. They're incurious. They're shallow. They don't, as you say, feel an obligation to be woken up. They think they are woken up. They've convinced themselves that, watching Rachel Maddow or, watching Morning Joe, that makes them alert to what is going on, even as the reality of it just becomes more and more absurd. You're obviously going to play that clip that I saw you were prepping when we were backstage before the show. And so, that's a perfect example. But yeah, look, the short of this is that this is just, it's so transparently absurd right now that, there's no more sophisticated answer I can give you than just these people are just dumb as dog shit.
I've actually written a lot about this. As a former neoliberal shitlib myself, I feel like I can report from the inside.
You can give us a valuable perspective.
I'm like the escapee.
Uh-huh.
All right, so that shit, it's brain candy disguised as current events, and they present themselves in a way that I feel I have an excuse. I feel like the absurdities of this whole thing were not as obvious at the time that I was a part of it. It became too obvious to me and millions of other people during the Bernie Sanders campaign when I saw how they treated him That was my red pill moment,
Mm.
to coin a phrase. But as you think you're getting news, you're being massaged in ways that you don't notice when you're in that bubble, to absorb points of view, perspectives, and assumptions that serve elite power. And you absorb those as what reasonable people believe, right? This is what reasonable people believe. And the people who don't believe this, they're the crazy cuckoo birds. You don't need to listen to those people. And if you really have a steady diet of this stuff, you do become completely brainwashed and resistant. You become resistant to other points of view. You have been, without even realizing it, you've been conditioned to shut down your brain when anyone hits certain key concepts that you've been trained to believe are out of bounds. And those are the things the crazy people think. Oh, yeah, right, yeah. It's a lot of, yes, we would like to make a better society, but you don't see the complex realities the way that I do because I read the Times. And that's another thing. They flatter their audience to believe that they're the smart, serious, sophisticated people. That is a very big part of the hook, right? When you watch those Sunday morning roundtables when that fucking old reptile Cokie Roberts was still alive, she used to love to go on about her family's deep roots in DC. And oh yes, well, Ben Bradley used to come to our house for dinner, and they'd all be listening rapt. Now when you watch that as a viewer, what it does for you is make you feel like you're an insider, right? You're listening to the way these DC people talk, and you're one of them. And that's why when you debate these shit libs, they'll talk to you like they're getting their information from the fucking CEO of Pfizer in a parking garage, like they're insiders, because that's how they're trained to see themselves. That's part of the hook. And that's part of why it's so hard to deprogram people in that bubble, because you are asking them to no longer be in this club that they've been convinced they're a part of, but they never really were.
Yeah, I remember when Kynan and I went to this AOC town hall that we were banned from going into. This was the most recent one. I remember I saw a line out there, and so I started talking to people on the line because I was kind of surprised. Like, there's a lot of people for her town hall. And there were definitely people who were like fanatical AOC people.
Mhm.
One guy
Right.
even admitted, like, I'm here to make sure nobody messes with her, something like that.
Right.
But
Right.
I would say, like, the majority of people I spoke to who were like from the area was people with kids, people who were working, and I was asking them, like, so what are you here for exactly? And one woman told me, like, well, there's a lot of vendors on the street and it's really dirty and there are rats everywhere and I don't think anything's being done about it. And I hope to get to talk to the congresswoman and tell her how dirty things are. Another person told me that they were scared about all the there's something about like cutting of school budgets because Eric Adams had just like slashed the education
Right.
budget
Yeah.
again. Right? Like people were genuinely
And the library.
yeah, people were concerned about things that concerned them, right? And their kids. Like, is my kid going to have a good
Sure.
education? The streets are dirty and filled with rats. I mean, why isn't anyone
Sure.
doing this? And their general attitude towards AOC was, I don't know if she's going to do anything, but I hope she does. Which is like, that's a very reasonable thing to expect of your congresswoman. Like, I hope she does something.
Well, Jose, it doesn't sound like you're describing liberals. It sounds like you're describing normal people.
Yeah.
That's a different thing.
Right. And I kind of feel for these people who, they just want a functioning subway system. They don't care about what's going on in the Ukraine. And that's also a little sad because, like, it puts us all at risk of dying from that war. And Anyway, before we stray too far, I do want to show some kind of attempt at truth, which may not get reported. But there was this clip of a journalist going after U.S. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby. Let's see if I can pop this up here. Share tab audio. Share. Let's see if this works here. Does it seem? This is what the person says. A little hard to hear the audio, so I'll read what they say first. Does it seem believable to you that Russia would destroy a dam for ethnic Russian villages and cut off the water supply to Crimea? Seems about as logical as blowing up its own pipeline, right? And then we also get Kirby's response. Let's watch that clip.
Does it seem believable to you that Russia would destroy a dam and flood ethnic Russian villages and cut off the water supply to Crimea? I mean, that doesn't seem logical. It seems about as logical as blowing up one's own pipeline, doesn't it?
We've come to no conclusions on this. We're working with the Ukrainians. We'll try to get as much information as we can.
So, you know,
that's how you get a job in Washington.
But think about it, right? Like all of the media is already saying, "Oh, Russia did it, Russia did it, Russia did it." But when they actually get just a little pushback, well, we're still trying to figure out who did this. We're working on the Ukrainians to figure out how this happened. What if the Ukrainians?
It's amazing. It's amazing.
What if the Ukrainians did this to themselves? Then what? Are they going to say that? Go ahead, Russ. You're going to say something.
Well, it's going back to what you were saying before about Marshall McLuhan and the medium being the message. I think in a way, people being so disconnected from just the earth, just reality, living their whole lives in these digital spaces. I think it makes it easier to manipulate narratives in a lot of respects, because there's just something fundamental about walking around outside, playing some sports, dealing with the actual reality of physical life. And the more people you have who spend more time in a world of digital artifice than they spend in the actual world, I think it actually makes them more gullible and more prone to fake narratives, because they have a harder time sorting out what reality actually is, because they don't spend a lot of time in it.
Yeah, Keaton.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's absurd. As imagine the media trying to convince you that Nicole Brown Simpson stabbed herself.
Yeah,
right. If that was the party line, that was the party line.
It could have happened. It could have happened.
I mean, we're looking into other things that may have happened, but this seems to be where we're going with this. Yeah, look, it's just absolute bonkers. I mean, look at the motive structure here. Zelensky has been trying to persuade greater investment in his war effort since the very beginning of this, whether it was claiming that the Russians fired a missile into Poland when we know for certain it was a Ukrainian missile that they said was, what was the excuse they gave? It was misdirected or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Russia's that way. Poland's this way. Ukraine is the largest country in Europe by land area. So how'd you fire it by accident? What do you have, fucking Wile E. Coyote running your air defense
Zelensky
system?
was right on there.
We warned you that the Russians were going to have larger ambitions. I hope you see now.
That motherfucker is dangerous.
Yeah, so
he
first
wants
it's that,
World War III. He
right,
literally
then you got
wants
the Nord
World War
Stream
III.
thing where they now say a Ukrainian group, a Ukrainian aligned group did it. It's not the Russians. That's now common knowledge. It just came out in the Washington Post that U.S. intel learned of a Russian plot to blow up the Nord Stream months before it happened.
You mean Ukrainian?
Sorry, yes. Sorry, got that confused. Important detail to get right in this conversation. Yes, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Yes. And now this. So you have a pattern of behavior here where the Ukrainian state is trying to, win over as many resources and as much international support as they can by showing these, increasing levels of violence that is being perpetrated against them. Whereas what motivation would Russia have to blow up its own pipeline? What motivation would Russia have to attack a NATO country? The whole reason that they invaded Ukraine was to make sure Ukraine would not become a NATO country, because were it to become a NATO country, it'd be too late. Then they couldn't attack it without, actually formally starting World War III. Same thing here. Why would they blow up a dam that would end up sabotaging the Crimea and flooding Russian villages? I think 40,000 Russian people are now having to evacuate their homes. I just read that before we went on. I hope I'm right about that. But it's a lot of people who are now in danger, and a lot of Russian sort of infrastructure being jeopardized, if not totally neutralized, by this. So again, just look at the pattern of behavior and look at the motives, and it's not even close. It's just absurd. That's why the reporter asked that question. And if you notice, no denial on his part. No denial. So, well,
we're looking
into it.
Well, because he doesn't want to say anything that's going to come back to bite him in the ass when the truth comes out, because he knows damn well what actually happened. He doesn't want to be in an interview years from now where they play back a clip where he goes, "Oh no, those motherfuckers did it."
Yeah, right. It could be like so that they can deny, as you said, 20 years down the line. Hey, don't you think you were lying with Ukraine? What do you mean lying? We said we were still figuring it out.
I said we did. We were figuring it out,
and we're still figuring it out too.
But you have this really dumb population that does believe this. But strangely enough, I seem to be the hopeful one in this segment. Most people don't. That's why these outlets are all collapsing. The media has never been as despised and distrusted as it is now. So most people are not buying it.
Of course.
It's a very small number of people that unfortunately and perhaps predictably are very visible because they tend to be in the PMC positions in society. That class that has just enough to have something to lose and not enough to assert real power, that's the base for this. Those are the people who believe it when you tell them this.
Yeah, and look, I'm optimistic too. In fact, actually, June 10th, which is 3 days from now, is the 60th anniversary of a speech given by John F. Kennedy at American University. And in that speech, he says, what kind of peace do I mean? Or as he would say, what kind of peace do I mean? What kind of peace do we seek? Not a Pax Americana enforced on the world by American weapons of war. Not the peace of the grave or the security of the slave. I am talking about genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living, the kind that enables men and nations to grow and to hope and to build a better life for their children. Not merely peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, but peace for all time. And then he says, I speak of peace because of the new face of war. Total war makes no sense in an age when great powers can maintain large and relatively invulnerable nuclear forces and refuse to surrender without resort to those forces. It makes no sense in an age when a single nuclear weapon contains almost 10 times the explosive force delivered by all the Allied air forces in the Second World War. And it makes no sense in an age when the deadly poisons produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and sea to the far corners of the globe into generations yet unborn. And finally, there's a bigger speech where he says, I speak of peace, therefore, as the necessary rational end of rational men. I realize that the pursuit of peace is not as dramatic as the pursuit of war, and frequently the words of the pursuer fall on deaf ears, but we have no more urgent task. That was delivered in June 10th of 1963. 3 days from now, that's the 60th anniversary of that speech. What would happen to him just a few months later? He'd get his brains blown out of him. Why? I think it has to do with this intention laid out in the speech. And I know people have a problem with mythologizing Kennedy. And in all honesty, the speech is not about Kennedy. It's about what other president in the last 50 years has ever said anything remotely close to this? Like,
Yeah, no, you have not heard that. You have not heard that language. I would argue for pretty understandable reason, given how JFK's time in office was cut short.
Yeah, it was that was a recall effort that
Yeah,
was
they
quite
had their own
successful.
recall. Yeah,
It was
exactly.
quite
yeah.
successful.
sorry, that's terrible.
that
But
that
go
that
on.
was that was the clean joke. You should have heard the other one. Yeah, reading something like that, and it strikes you with him and with his brother with some of their speeches. Yeah, I know it wasn't the reality, particularly for people of color, but there was an ideal that America was striving for that's articulated there that we fell so far short of. Yeah, it's not even a speech like that would just be strange now. It would be so out of tune with the realities of our foreign policy. This was this moment after World War II, I think, where there was really a deep think on the part of a lot of people in the political class and in academia, thought leaders in society. They had seen the horrors of the concentration camps. And I think at its best in that moment, they were really trying to think about how what a better world would look like. Like, hey, maybe we don't have a world where it's all about, fighting each other all the time. Maybe now with all this new technology at our fingertips, maybe we don't have to just keep repeating this cycle of imperial rise and decline. Maybe we can do things different. And to be fair, and this is something that's very unfashionable to point out today, yeah, America did do it differently. They did. They did not do it like the British or the Ottomans or the Romans. They didn't just go send their legions out and roughshod take over countries. But in the end, the effect of it was kind of the same because they did it with the CIA. They did it in other ways. They did it with economic domination and imperialism rather than by sending the troops. So in the end, we fell so far short of those ideals that we're sitting here now with a president who is a cruel joke when you put him next to the man who made that speech with such high ideals at that time. And we sit here with those dreams of a United Nations that would settle conflicts peacefully. Those dreams are in tatters. And you hear a speech like that, it really reminds you how much hope there was at that moment and how much that hope was squandered and never realized.
Yeah, it's actually kind of dark. Kynan, you've been gone the whole show.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I don't know what's going on, but Russ, I'd like to respond if my internet connection permits me to. But you had mentioned the U.S. being different from the British empires, the French empires, and so on, and I think that's reflected because when the non-aligned movement was just founded in I think it was the late 50s, the early 50s, and President Sukarno of Indonesia at the conference where it was founded, the Bandung Conference, he evoked the Declaration of Independence as the first universal anti-colonial document, and he referred to Paul Revere's right, the British are coming, and I think he did that to evoke the mystic chords of memory, as Lincoln would call it, within the American people, because I don't think we were founded to be imperialists. I think that Kennedy's speech attests to what the United States was intended to be and how we fell short of that. And I think that's why it's important that we bring it back to the American consciousness, because we are anti-imperial by our founding, I think. And unless we want to get blown up in a nuclear war, we have to convince the American people of that and get them to act. So
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, gentlemen, we are coming to the end of your segment here, so I want to pivot now to an interview that we did with Oliver Stone. But before I get you guys going, I do just need to make a couple announcements. If people would like to get access to the full interview that we're about to play, sign up on our Patreon. And recently, oh, there he goes. And recently, oh, there he is. He's back. Okay. And recently, we pledged, Kynan and I pledged to stream once a week and to put out 2 well-produced videos. And I'm happy to announce that our first well-produced video will be on Victoria Nuland. And so I'd like to showcase the first 25 seconds of our Victoria Nuland video, which your money has helped sponsor us. And this will be the star of our first video coming back. We've published videos before on the topic of Russiagate, on the topic of Ukrainian Nazis before the war started, back when Biden first won his election. I guess it's okay to say the words election on YouTube, but
on Friday it'll be okay to say what you want about that. YouTube's changing
Yes.
their policy.
Starting on Friday.
It starts Friday. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm
still
sorry.
can't do
I
it
meant
now.
to say, when he barely won the election.
Right now, we recommend the words peanut butter in place of election,
Right, exactly.
Oh.
jelly for election fraud.
We're actually gonna have a countdown
Hey!
live stream tomorrow night till midnight. It'll be like the ball drop.
Yeah.
Well, election, you know.
Yeah.
God, right at midnight. God damn it! I don't even want to say it. I don't want to mess up.
Well,
your
then
channel.
for the next 24 hours, the elections were completely safe and fair and
Yes.
counted fairly.
Yes.
And Joe Biden won fair and square. Anyway, I want to showcase the first 25
Solid.
seconds of our next video that'll be on Victoria Nuland. It'll be going, we're starting a series basically called Demystifying the Deep State, because we don't think the deep state is as deep as people like to say. It's not just shadowy figures, it's real people that we've documented, we know. And Victoria Nuland's actually at the very top of this so-called deep state, even though she's brought up. So here's an intro video we made for our video. So people check this out.
Beware. Beware. For where she goes, death and destruction are sure to follow. If you see her come to your country, run for the hills. Beware. She is the White Death. The Yellow Plague. She is a Karen.
70 dead and counting.
Beware.
Yeah, so that's...
That looks very cool. Would you get Bela Lugosi for that?
No, that was me.
That's good.
That was-
You can do
that
other
was you?
impressions, Yeah.
That was pretty
Yeah.
good.
I was
didn't
trying to
I didn't
imitate...
know you had an ear like that.
I was trying to imitate, it was that guy from The Lighthouse, Willem Dafoe from The Lighthouse. I don't know if you guys seen that film.
I
Yeah.
haven't actually.
Did I see that? No, I'm thinking of a different movie.
That was the guy who did The Witch and then The Northman after that. But I
Right,
saw
right.
both of those. I didn't see The
gotta see
Lighthouse
that
though.
movie.
Yeah.
The Vivitch, that's what we call it. But
Yeah.
okay, so we're going to pivot now to an interview with Oliver Stone. But before I get you guys going, I brought you up in the interview. And I want to play that for you guys here.
Yeah, I know.
Put
The pressure's on now.
To put the fire under your butt. So here we go.
Jose, keep me apprised of what you're up to and your next, all your actions. I'd love to know what's going on with your interventions, so to speak.
Yes. And you'll be happy to know, actually, next month, friends of mine named Do Dissidents, they have filmed a documentary about the interventions and me. And it'll be premiering next month or so. I'm sure we can send you a link for you to watch it.
I'd love to see it. Yeah. What's it called?
I don't know what the documentary is going to be called, but they are called Do Dissidents. That's the name of their production company, if you want to.
I don't know what. Say it again.
Do, like DUE, Dissidents, DISSIDENCE. Yeah, what you didn't see was
Very
him
cool.
saying, I don't know what that is, but okay. So,
And most people don't.
you know, maybe we could get
He's
him
not
to do
alone.
producer credits on it. You know.
Yeah.
Get a worldwide premiere on this and get on the red carpets. But anyway, gentlemen, we're gonna now pivot to the Oliver Stone interview. So I want to thank both of you for coming on. It's always fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad we can have.
Oh, great to see you guys.
Yeah,
Always a
man.
pleasure.
Of course,
How
gentlemen.
great
I'm
to
gonna
see you guys for the 5 minutes I was able to be on.
Don't
Okay.
do it on the phone, man.
I'm gonna kick you out now. Goodbye.
All right. Lovely.
Take care.
There we go. Now look at that. I have the power to just move people backstage. That's great. Yeah. All right. So, Kynan, go ahead. You have the spotlight. You could talk about the Oliver Stone interview and how it went, and then while I set it up here and play it.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll set up how we met him. If people don't know, Oliver Stone just released a brand new documentary called Nuclear Now.
Thank you again for giving us the time. Sorry, go on.
Oh my
Go.
God. Yeah,
Go.
is okay. Okay, so he has a new documentary which he did it because he wants to show the ostensible benefits of nuclear power, and there's been a great drive to attack it by the environmentalist movement. And it was a very well produced documentary, but Jose and I got to meet him afterwards. Jose got to speak with him about our wonderful interventions, especially his recent one against all the people of the mainstream press. And from there on in, we got an interview with him. But in it, we talk about a lot of things. We got to talk with him about his work producing his film JFK, which showed that the Kennedy assassination was the result of a conspiracy and not just some crazy lone gunman. We did talk to him especially about the American University speech, which kept coming up as a theme within the interview, because this was what the United States used to be. This is, the better angels of our nature speaking to us about how we can understand the enemy, how we can actually cooperate with with Russia. And there's a big need to revive that speech today. He talked a lot about his recent documentary, and it was just a lot of fun. He's a great person. If you haven't seen his films, we recommend that you do. And you should definitely read his autobiography. I know we talked about that too. What was the name of it again, Jose?
Chasing the Light.
Chasing the Light. Yeah. So people should check that out.
Yeah. So I guess without further ado, we're now going to play you an abridged version of the interview we did with Stone. It's about 20 minutes. The entire interview itself was about 45 minutes or so. But I tried to keep in the most important politically relevant parts here because I think that's important for the sake of public interest and for the sake of posterity. And the entire version will be available to the public on Saturday morning. But like I said, if you want to get early access to it, sign up on our Patreon. It helps us, help you, and help the future, and help the planet. So without further ado, let's bring back my ugly face here. Let's see if I can get this, hit play, and Day, for you to be interviewed by us. It's an honor, and we appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I think to just kind of start us off, I think what Kynan and I are trying to succeed in our mission is we're trying to get people our age, 18 to 30, to try and think about what it means to actually have an alternative. Because it's one thing, I think, to be rebellious against the oppressive system that we're all in, but what do you replace it with? And one of the things that we've really been promoting is this Kennedy speech that he gave at American University. And I believe you're familiar with it. Is that correct?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
One of
And
the great speeches of the century.
And so it's the 60th anniversary of that speech, I think in 3 days or so. And what is it exactly, what is your characterization of that speech, its importance, and how do I get people my age to actually go to that as their vision for the future?
The speech kind of went under the radar at the time, as I remember. It wasn't particularly noted until afterward. Kennedy had a very busy last 6-8 months of his life. This was many things were happening. It's interesting that he gave that speech almost a couple of days apart from when he gave his civil rights speech about the situation in Alabama. He gave a beautiful speech. You should familiarize yourself with that speech too, because it was one of the really first eloquent statements about civil rights. And it prefaced a lot of what Martin Luther King was going to say in his I Have a Dream speech. In fact, it did come after his, the I Have a Dream speech came in August, correct? August 63. No, it was right before it. It was actually a few months before it. You should read that speech because it's got grandiloquence to it, and he quotes Lincoln, and it's a beautiful speech. But his peace speech is extremely, to me, layered. It's a layered speech. He mentions many themes, among them reconciliation with the Soviet Union, and that was so important. And it was, as you know, it came after his near confrontation with the end of the world in 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis. This speech said that we're on the path to get it together with the Cold War was a myth. He knew this, but I mean, it's very hard to move a country away from a Cold War situation when you're spending billions of dollars on defense. As Eisenhower himself said, it's funny that Eisenhower spent the most amount of money, at the same time left behind a situation which he said was tragic. He said this is all the functions of state are going to be poisoned and contaminated by this relationship with business and the defense industry, and he meant it, and he was right. God damn it. So, and Kennedy carried that on, and he saw the same problem, although he didn't agree with Eisenhower on many things. And I think one of the most beautiful things in the speech was he recognizes the contribution of the Soviet Union in World War II. How many people were killed in the Soviet Union fighting the Nazis, fascism? He at the time he said something like 26 million or something. But the truth is, now we know the numbers are going up, and the latest actual research numbers are something closer to 39 million, and something like 20 some million were soldiers. So it's quite a huge sacrifice they made, and that is what has played a huge role in the Russian attitude towards the West. And people, I guess, in the West don't really recognize that. They don't realize the 4 or 5 of every German soldier killed in World War II was killed on the Eastern Front, not on the Western Front. Now, that's not to say the West did not contribute. They did. Lend-Lease was very big to Russia. Lend-Lease, we were shipping them petroleum, all kinds of products, which was crucial to their effort and kept them going at a time when they were very, very deprived of everything. But you have to say the Russians did pull themselves up by the bootstrap. And Kennedy, he acknowledged the damage done to their country. He said 1/3 of that country, basically the Ukraine area, the whole western section of the country, had been decimated by the Nazis. It was so he said from here to Chicago would be the equivalent, meaning in the Soviet Union. From New York, from Washington to Chicago is what he was relating to. In that speech, he also and he said it's time to realize this, and it's time for our countries to basically get it together and respect each other. And he emphasized not a Pax Americana. That was what people were thinking at the time, that it was an American peace governed by American weapons of war, which is what we have to some degree now in the world. In other words, he was counseling a real peace of understanding, of compassion, of mutual respect. And we never achieved that, believe it or not. We never achieved that. Briefly, I believe, he was killed in 16, soon thereafter, and his peace initiative with the Soviet Union went down in the toilet. Lyndon Johnson was a pedestrian politician and a stupid man because he got himself involved in a ridiculous war 6,000 miles away. He knew, he must have known better than to do that, and he kept fighting it. He never gave up because America cannot lose. It's a point of honor that Nixon kept emphasizing. We have to have a peace with honor. That peace with honor cost the Vietnamese millions of people, and it cost American lives quite a bit, and it destroyed a lot of the country in the sense of up here, our morale. We came back from that war, and I was a soldier there, much more callous about the world, we didn't consider at that time Asian people to be human beings in the same level that we were. I mean that it was a form of racism, but that existed, and it still exists. Now, of course, we've come to respect the Asian race because they made a lot of money and they're very good at business and organization and society and these people. But at that time, it was a whole other ballgame, and that war was one of the insanities of life that you have to live through. Everyone's going to live through some kind of insanity. I'm sure you will too, or you probably have already. But anyway, Kennedy's dream was shattered, but it still exists.
Mr. Stone, I wanted to get your thoughts on a recent admission that RFK Jr. made on the Sean Hannity show when he was asked about the death of his father, excuse me. And he had said, I'll just quote it, that the day that my uncle was killed, I was picked up at Sidwell Friends School and brought home. The first phone call that my father made after J. Edgar Hoover told him that his brother had been shot was to the CIA desk officer in Langley. It was only a mile from our house, and then my father said to him, "Did your people do this?" And then he goes on to describe his father asking the same question to Henry Lewis, who was one of the Cuban Bay of Pigs leaders, and John McCone, the head of the CIA then. So I want your thoughts on his recent admission and the importance of a member of the Kennedy family saying something like this.
It is important, but I'm surprised because I knew this and we've heard it before. Robert Kennedy was clearly moving in that direction, and several people have come out and said that he was definitely going to reopen the case. Now that has been questioned, but it seems to hold up that people who knew his intention was he was going to reopen the case, and that scared a lot of people because they knew they were guilty. So that adds to the motivation to kill him. And as we know, that is one of the most screwed up assassinations of all time. It's really dumb. I mean, to have all the shots from the front, and it seems like he was shot from the rear, definitely with that second gun from the security guard called Cesar Thane, I think it was called. Robert Kennedy has been correct about this, and he knows it. And it's shocking to see his family, which should be more in the Kennedy spirit, not open up to this and condemn him like this. I think Robert's very, very, very guts. He's got the guts of his father and the guts of his uncle. And unfortunately, we don't see it in the rest of them. There's, this, I mean, where else do you see such a ridiculous cover story as Oswald shoots him from this impossible position, and then he gets killed by a thug who's got underground connections with the mob, and that thug in turn dies of cancer very suddenly a couple of years later before he goes to trial. So Oswald is prevented from going to trial because Oswald knows a lot, because he's a plant, he's a agent provocateur, the French would say. He's an agent used by the intelligence agencies. He goes to Russia, he goes blah, blah, blah. He does all the moves. They use him like they use pawns on a piece, but he's not an important pawn. He only becomes important in hindsight, and then they got to kill him fast. But it's a ridiculous story. I mean, people who see movies would know right away that something's fishy, but the country fell asleep again. This is why the people don't react. I mean, the Warren Report made people angry. The majority of people got angry, but again, nothing changed in that government. Our government is somewhat of a dictatorship in that way because it just locks in. Now we have a one-party state, basically, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. The defense budget goes up to $1 trillion. It doesn't matter. These people keep voting and voting because the money gets channeled back in contributions to themselves. So money has got to come out of politics, clearly, but beyond that, the whole concept of a country worth defending that we believe in is very, very remote now.
Mr. Stone, this will be kind of like the last question-ish, and then I'm just going to ask one more thing of you. Donald Trump, when he was asked, why didn't you release the Kennedy files, he said, if you saw what was in them, you wouldn't want to release them too. Now, could you, this is kind of like a two-part question, I guess. Like, one, do you think he's being honest about that, or is he lying? And secondly, if he's being honest, would it expose the same kind of apparatus that is involved in the cover-up of the Nord Stream?
Well, we have it. Yeah, I understand. And what'd you say, the Gulf Stream?
Of the Nord Stream, blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a whole other story too. But definitely it falls in the same area of espionage. Now, you don't, if you have evidence of espionage, like you don't keep it on paper. It has to disappear. You have to shred it. You can't have incriminating information like that running around. So I highly doubt that there would be an incriminating piece of paper. All we were doing is trying to say, let's pry this, like Jim Garrison was doing in his trial, was trying to get a little more information. Pry it open. There are CIA agents whose files we know exist, but we can't get them. Those people would be people like Phillips, people like the guy in Florida, I forgot his name. There's a lot of these guys, Morales. I'm off the top of my head, I can't remember all the names, but there are people who worked on this case, and they knew Oswald, they knew all of the players, the Cubans, they knew the mob element was working with the CIA too. But there has to be a center, and there has to be an authority at the top. That's the only thing that makes sense. The authority that controls this thing is the CIA, and to some degree the FBI, but they don't work in tandem. They were competitive, but so sometimes some of the best information comes from the FBI because they don't know what's really going on. But James Angleton in counterintelligence plays a key role here, as does Richard Helms. Helms was the chief of the CIA eventually, and a key player. I believe he knows a lot. He knew a lot more. He lied his way through Congress, John. There was a joke when he appeared in front of the committee, the Church Committee. That was horrible what he did. Angleton too. They all lie, and but I don't know what Trump knows. He tends to be a melodramatic character, but he was the only one who actually, next to way back years ago, Garrison, he did try to do something, and then he backed off because those files were supposed to be released. Well, there was a date, 2016, I believe it was, and somebody got to him at the very last second and put pressure and said, you can't do this. So what he's saying, if they knew what they knew, it doesn't make sense. They wouldn't have that. They would not have that on paper, in my opinion. But there would be good information about the CIA agents and their meetings and so forth. But I don't think that's going to come out either. I like Howard Hunt too, by the way. He's a minor player, but he did say a lot of things before he died. Howard Hunt is not to be ignored. These files are important.
Just the very last question, and then we'll be wrapped up. You bringing it to now and the importance of speaking up the truth. I know you really liked what I did against the New York Times and the executive editors of Reuters and Washington Post and stuff. And we're going to continue to keep doing these things. Tynan and I are involved in training other people to do it because they recognize us now. We were barred from going into a congressional town hall in New York. They told us you're not allowed in. So
are they allowed to do that?
Well, I don't got the money for a lawyer. I'm sure not. But one of the things we do, though, no matter whenever we train people, is we tell them to speak the truth unapologetically. And I think you're an expert in that. And another expert in that is Seymour Hersh. Seymour Hersh is just saying what he knows, talking and reporting what he knows. And I think he's almost 80 years old or over 80 years old now. So he's doing his thing. He's just saying, you know what, I'm just going to publish it. And he said he took the Nord Stream story to Substack, and he said the last place he was going to take it to was the New York Times. Yeah. What is your reflection and observation on that story and on Seymour Hersh in general?
Well, on Nord Stream, I do believe that the United States had to know. I mean, when Joe Biden said that so clearly in a speech before it blew up, that it's not going to go through. He almost said it point blank. He was determined to stop it. So Biden was very much aware of the situation. What exactly happened, I don't know. Maybe they used Ukrainians. I'm sure they did, but it's, the motive is so clear that, it's ridiculous but the United States first cover story was the Russians who did it, which I find to be ridiculous. The Nord Stream was very important to Joe Biden, and it did sever the relationship between Russia and Europe, and that has hurt Europe more than it hurt Russia. That's what this unbelievable thing is. Germany really went along with it. That was German property as well as Russian property. They blew it up. Germany did nothing because of this. I'm saying this new chancellor, he's not really a very strong man. He seems to be cowed. In fact, he was booed the other day by his own party in Germany. I read that Scholz was booed. because of they're so unhappy with. He's destroyed the German economy essentially. They've allowed the Americans to take over and dictate to them that they're going to do liquid natural gas is going to come from the U.S. plus other countries, and that Germany is going to abide by these higher prices. As a result, Germany, which already destroyed its nuclear plants, is now really in a hole. France is doing better with energy than Germany, and much less the coal plants that Germany. Oh, it's a nightmare. Germany has lost its standing. When you remember when we went to the Iraq War, Germany and France did not go with us. The prime minister said no. They had some sovereignty. That's pretty interesting that they at least said no to the United States on a major war that we went into. But where was I? I'm sorry. The pipeline, right? Oh yeah, on Hirsch. I know Hirsch, and we've had. I think he's done some very good work on My Lai. He did some very good work. I don't know if his Nord Stream story holds. I mean, I've heard pro and con. I haven't really investigated it, but Hirsch, on the other hand, has done a lot of damage. And you have perhaps not know of this, but you should look at his book he wrote on Camelot. It was a very poor reporting job, and it's been outed. And he tried basically to go after the Kennedy myth, and he used. You see, when Kennedy was killed, that's when the forces that were against Kennedy all started to come out of the woodwork. The CIA among them, all these people that worked with him gave information that was damaging to the Kennedys, such as they were behind the assassination attempts on Castro. Not so. There's no evidence of it at all. And Jim DiEugenio has been on this case for a long time. He reads everything. He was my main researcher on my JFK Revisited. Absolutely not true. Kennedy was not into assassination, did not think it would work, and knew it would backfire. But Hirsch hints at all this stuff, and the sleaze with the gangsters and the women. And so Hirsch is very much a Puritan in his mentality, and he has this, I call it, vulnerable side where he sees sex as some kind of mortal wound or something. He's a strange guy, Hirsch. I would counsel you to be cautious in what he writes. He's good, but he's getting his information from CIA people, and he's admitted as such. And that CIA person who he particularly got information on Camelot was the assistant to Richard Helms during all this process. I forgot his name, but he gave a lot of information on the Kennedys, against the Kennedys, to Hirsch. So that the source has to be questioned there.
Okay, perfect. What a spicy way to kind of tease you a bit on the interview. I was actually kind of surprised when he said that too about Hirsch, because I was like, wow. Now, it's true you shouldn't glorify, and actually Stone is very consistent with what we've been saying, which is there needs to be an investigation. Right, Seymour Hirsch has actually presented the strongest possible evidence that we have that this was a U.S. attack on Nord Stream, and it's not even saying take what he's saying as the gospel. It just warrants an investigation.
Yeah, yeah, and what he said on Kennedy, I mean, it's not like we're glorifying him either. Kennedy may have been involved in some messy stuff. All of that may be true, but what the American University speech shows, and what the civil rights speeches show in particular, that he was willing to change, right? And that's and Ozzy. But, he had that quality in him. And I think that's the most important thing, when considering leadership. Not what they believe. Some people might believe in things that you don't agree with, but if they're human, well, that's what really counts in the end, I think.
Exactly. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you again for tuning in to our kind of revival stream. And even though we promised once a week, we actually have a special show tomorrow. We'll be having Laurie Spencer on and Dennis Speed, who will be doing some pretty good, interesting things on this 60th anniversary of Kennedy. And I think kind of what I will do here while I pontificate trying to actually get the clip up itself is I think I will leave our viewers with a 4-minute section of the Kennedy.
Oh, what time will that be tomorrow?
6:30 Eastern time.
Okay.
Does that work for you, Kynan?
No, I just want our audience to know. That's why.
Oh, okay. I thought you're telling me about that it wasn't going to work for you. Let's see here if I can actually pull up this Kennedy speech. Kynan, pontificate about Saturday. What's happening? Oh, never mind. I have it here.
Okay. Yeah, you might want to just show the page to people.
Which page? Oh, the Saturday page? I mean, yeah, the Saturday page. In 1 second here, I think. Let me just upload this video first, and we're gonna get better at this. I'm gonna get better.
And I'm never getting on by phone again. It's a disaster.
What was the thing? Was that you were getting you were getting phone calls, right?
It was a combination of the phone calls and the fact that my internet was just going out. I don't know. NSA, be hacking into my stuff.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So Saturday, what's going on is the Schiller Institute. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the world needs JFK's vision of peace. And so the Schiller Institute is doing this conference on Saturday, June 10th, and they've invited many people outside of the organization to actually come and speak, give messages about this speech, which we will leave you with today. And so this is at 10 a.m. EDT. You can register if you'd like. The YouTube link's on the bottom. I guess just to end this off, Kynan, and to everyone on our stream, really, please hit like. Really, before you get off the stream, pay close attention to the next 4 minutes. Kynan painstakingly subtitled this next video, when word by word, letter by letter, grammatically correcting it. Listen to it. You'll love it. I'm telling you, you might even be inspired to share it yourself.
I have therefore chosen this time and place to discuss a topic on which ignorance too often abounds and the truth too rarely perceived, and that is the most important topic on earth, peace. What kind of a peace do I mean, and what kind of a peace do we seek? Not a Pax Americana enforced on the world by American weapons of war, not the peace of the grave or the security of the slave. I am talking about genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living, the kind that enables men and nations to grow and to hope and build a better life for their children. Not merely peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time. I speak of peace, therefore, as the necessary, rational end of rational men. I realize the pursuit of peace is not as dramatic as the pursuit of war, and frequently the words of the pursuers fall on deaf ears, but we have no more urgent task. First, examine our attitude towards peace itself. Too many of us think it is impossible. Too many think it is unreal. But that is a dangerous, defeatist belief. It leads to the conclusion that war is inevitable, that mankind is doomed, that we are gripped by forces we cannot control. We need not accept that view. So let us persevere. Peace need not be impractical, and war need not be inevitable. By defining our goal more clearly, by making it seem more manageable and less remote, we can help all people to see it, to draw hope from it, and to move irresistibly towards it. No government or social system is so evil that its people must be considered as lacking in virtue. As Americans, we find communism profoundly repugnant, as a negation of personal freedom and dignity. But we can still hail the Russian people for their many achievements in science and space, in economic and industrial growth, in culture, in acts of courage. Among the many traits the peoples of our two countries have in common, none is stronger than our mutual abhorrence of war. Almost unique among the major world powers, we have never been at war with each other. And no nation in the history of battle ever suffered more than the Soviet Union in the Second World War. At least 20 million lost their lives. So let us not be blind to our differences, but let us also direct attention to our common interests and the means by which those differences can be resolved. And if we cannot end now our differences, at least we can help make the world safe for diversity. For in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures, and we are all mortal.
There we go. So with that, everyone, thank you again for coming back to our revival stream. Thank you for the $10 we made on Super Chats. That was unexpected. You know what? Just one more time, actually, while I have you all, I again just want to show the intro, the first 25 seconds to our Victoria Nuland video. Usually when we make these videos, I like to make a little creative introduction just to kind of get people hooked. And I want to show you what your money is kind of helping us do and helping us, you know, be independent in. So here's that.
Beware. Beware. For where she goes, death and destruction are sure to follow. If you see her come to your country, run for the hills. Beware. She is the White Death, the Yellow Plague. She is a Karen.
70 dead and counting.
So it's going to be a heavy topic. Kynan and I try to kind of balance the seriousness with a little bit of humor, but it's very difficult to bring humor into a situation that's very serious. That being said, Victoria Nuland is no different than Jabba the Hutt and like a slug monster.
Yeah.
So,
She's been eating more of the Twinkies than she's been handing out to Nazis.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. So anyway, with that, gentlemen and ladies who've tuned in, I want to thank you again for coming on to our stream. This has been a great stream. See us again tomorrow at 6:30. And also, Kynan, I just confirmed Caleb Maupin for Monday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, and more surprise guests coming soon. So